Welcome back to Redstone with Dave.
And Baker. And now, on to this Hopper Pulse Extender, who I need to get the name for. I thought I wrote it down.
Very long pulse extender, I see.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Where is this? It looks like... Okay. It's by Avail Pursuit on YouTube. And in his intro, he calls himself Severed Pursuit. So I don't know which one of them.
Well, we give
Avail Pursuit is his YouTube.
Okay,
yes.
Cool.
And we'll also link to Nanorex's. So, I mean, like I said,
we're linking
follow
to
the tutorials.
Were we going to link to that?
For his minecart loader.
Oh, okay. Are we going to link to that in the YouTube description of the video?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Make sure to do that.
Description or video or both. I don't know. One of those.
Yeah, let's put links for all of these in there so people can check them out for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So
this is the pulse extender. So this works in a very similar way to this timer.
Okay.
But the difference is that one is wired so that it only happens once. So in this case, when this is powered, that torch below the hopper turns off. Right?
Yeah.
When that torch turns off, it means that these quartz blocks start flowing into this one. And as that happens, when this dust is on, that torch also turns off. And because that torch is turned off, this also stops being powered, which then powers the torch on the other side under this, right?
Okay, now
which then turns this dust on permanently, or not permanently, so that this cycle doesn't happen again. Right? So in that change of cycle, as you'll see, this dust turns off, which allows the inverter to work and turn that on and stop the inverter. So I will add another items in there so that you can see it easier. Okay. So this is off, allowing the items to cycle into this hopper, and then they start cycling back.
Okay, cool.
Uh-oh.
Now this
there might have been a little bit of interference in the mic there.
Oh, that's okay. We all have parents. I
don't know. We'll just bleep it out or something.
Yeah. We just bleep out the parents. So now I notice this one has a button, whereas this one doesn't have a button. So I assume there's like
that's because this extends the length of the button, and this one is just turning on its own.
I see. Okay.
So this is a timer, and this is a pulse extender.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And so then this would normally just work as a timer if it weren't for this comparator, which turns on this torch. So basically, you actually have a pretty common useful circuit in here, which is, it has some sort of funny gate name that I can never remember. But basically, it means that it can only take the signal once until you somehow change it. So basically, if I press this button, so I press this button once, it changes the signal, right?
Okay.
So now instead of, or I'll put some lamps down so it's easier to see. So that lamp's on right now. No matter how many times I press the button on this side, that lamp doesn't change. But if I press the button on this side, it swaps again.
Right.
And I can press this as many times as I want, and it doesn't swap. But then when I go back here and press this, it does swap.
Okay.
So that's what's happening here. You can actually see that circuit underneath these two hoppers.
Oh,
So can
yeah.
you see that under the hoppers? So
Yeah.
basically, this button provides that first toggle,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So this button, when you press that button, it provides the first toggle. So that would be like pressing this.
Okay.
So now
Got it.
all of these fill up. And then when this hopper is empty, this torch turns on for a second and provides the second toggle, which then allows the items to start flowing back.
Okay.
And so the length of that pulse is all of the items flowing into this hopper and then flowing back.
Okay.
Because as long as there's one item in this hopper, this comparator is on. So when you first press the button, that first item goes through. So now this is on. All of the items come through, still on. Almost all the items go back, still on. Last item is still in here, still on. And then when that last item goes back in, it turns off again.
Okay. I got it. Okay, so I understand the concept here between the timer and the pulse extender. Are there any examples you can give for like why, like ways that you could use this or cool things that you've seen?
Okay, well, this pulse extender could work if you want a. Well, actually, here's how you could use these in tandem, actually. So this timer, let's say you have a mob farm that flushes.
Okay.
So every minute you want to turn on water that flushes all of the mobs off the platforms into your fall pit, right?
Yeah.
Well, in that case, because it's dispensed. But so say you're using pistons, not dispensers. So after a minute, we get a pulse. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'd have, so we'd want 30 times 2.5 items in here, right? So that's 75 items in these hoppers.
Okay.
So that would allow for a pulse every 60.
Gotcha.
With that pulse, we want those pistons. So the pistons would be holding back. Those pistons would be holding back water. Right?
Yeah.
But with that pulse, the piston would just turn off and then back on really quickly, right?
Right.
So I'll
Okay.
actually.
So right. So I see. So you need to lower the piston for enough time to let the water flow out and then raise it back
Yeah,
up.
and not only do you need to let the water flow out, mobs flow in water pretty slowly. So you
Right.
need to make sure that there's enough time for that to happen. So
I see. Okay.
if we just break and place, that's not any time. So like if I'm a mob and that happens, well, I moved, but I didn't quite get into the hall, right?
Right.
We need it to be extended, which, oh, still not quite enough time. So you'd have to make the pulse longer. Oh, okay. There we go. So that's enough time to flush everybody in.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's a situation where you'd hook that pulse from here up to the pulse extender.
Gotcha.
And so then the other kind of nice thing about this is that you can make that extension for a really, really long time. So you could have something like where you have this really giant mob farm where it's several layers. So like the water goes from this layer and that continues for a bunch of blocks. And then you go down by one block and that continues for a bunch of blocks. And then you go down by one more block. And you don't want to have to use a bunch of water for that. So you
Right.
just have one water source at the top and that takes even longer.
Okay.
So you could have like a 2-minute delay on that pulse extender.
Gotcha. Okay, sweet.